Hello, everyone. Dr. Rodney Unmasked and Inspired. Welcome to another episode. I know that you will be thrilled to hear that I have brought someone in that can talk with us about the importance of self care from so many different dimensions, but also talk from a leadership perspective. The person that we will be hearing from today is the Reverend Dr. John Wesley Howard. The second, is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Yes. And he is an educator. He is a person who has climbed the ranks, the military ranks of lieutenant colonel, who is now retired. But he is a person who will be bringing us information that will be so useful as we think about what it means to be people who are in times such as this, where we are going to be in need of understanding leadership principles, also what it means to be people of faith in times like this. But I want to just open up the mic and just have John speak to you, introduce himself. And
God bless you, Dr. Rodney. Appreciate you. Appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, as you already said, John Wesley Howard II. Yes, have had the opportunity to serve in the military, roughly about 34 years altogether. Um, Retired now and am an educator. Love what I do. I teach high school. I've taught sixth grade. I've taught college level before. But now focusing on tapping into the next generation, what I call transgenerational conversation, trying to help uh, new leaders, young leaders, to have the essential aspects that it's important um, to give them a grounded foundation for what it means to be a leader and looking at the ethos of a leader in the sense of the ethos of a servant leader more so than anything.
what can
And
you share some thoughts on how to better prepare? Let's say that we have some parents out there that really see the potential of their children,
right.
and how do you prepare them for leadership? Give some suggestions if you don't mind.
Well, one of the things I look at is that I tell the kids all the time there are five things that define you as a person: your name, your word, your integrity, also your character, and how you carry yourself in that sense, and what it does to shape you. Because ultimately, if you're not a person of integrity, if you're not a person of character, if you're not a person who honors your word or the characteristics, how you give your word and so forth, those are essential things. I mean, the if we look at, in a sense, the responsibility that we have, because I look at teaching kids the importance of what it means to be accountable. That's one of the biggest things. The responsibility of leadership. I tell them that it will cost you something. There's a difference between personal power and positional power. Positional power is something that you get as a result of being in that position, hired for that position, however you want to put it. But personal power is something that you build on, and you allow your character to be shaped. You know, it's the old adage, whether leaders are born or are they made. And the construct is you set the standard, you model the standard, then you can enforce the standard. But if you're not willing to set or model, your communication towards the standard is nebulous because of the fact that there's no authenticity in who you are as a leader.
Is that a challenge for young people today, or are we seeing, due to the rap culture and the things
Mhm.
that are we seeing our kids express themselves more authentically now?
Right. I would say it's both, because one of the things that, especially being an educator, what you have to look at is whether it's culturally responsive education in that sense. Do they see themselves doing what it is that we project? I mean, there's various models and so forth of learning. And so I think it's having those modalities and understanding how students learn and then being able to incorporate that in the lessons that you teach. I think it's so essential. And the big thing is really ensuring that people really understand, or the kids really understand what it means to be a leader and have a leader that looks like them, that is calling them forward. But then there's also transformational and transactional type of leadership. And so the transformational is that process that person is learning throughout their entire lives. That transactional, I say, I heard somebody say it this way, that the transactional is this exchange, that happens with some people within leadership. But I think the major focus has to be not just being or doing or having, because a lot of people are trying to do leadership. A lot of people are trying to have stuff as a result of their leadership. And the construct of that is that ultimately what happens is that people never become something. So if I understand I'm being, meaning that that's the establishment. I'm not just a leader who does things. Leadership is core essence of who I am.
If I'm a parent that is looking to help my child be transformational
Hmm.
versus transactional, what parenting model can I use to kind of subvert that potential of my child being transactional versus transformational?
Right.
And if that makes sense.
It does. It does. You have to be actively engaged. You have to model that. I mean, oftentimes we want to look at somebody else to take on the responsibility of actually showing our children how to do something. I mean, the greatest advocates for our children are we as parents. And so I think one of the biggest things that we're lacking is just parental leadership in that sense. I mean, as an educator, I can't do everything for the child. I mean, I even though I may have them, a large portion of the day in some sense of the word, I may see the kids throughout and do realize the responsibility I have as an educator, and then to model that. I think communicating is, no organization is greater than its ability to communicate internally and externally. And so you can have a mission and vision, but unless it's operationalized through the communication that you really have, and then that's modeled. I mean, it's one thing I look at, when we look at historically how we, as an African American male, how unfortunately we've been, or should I say, misrepresented or underrepresented within like STEM education or STEAM, even though I would say 85 to 90% of the patents and the inventions and so forth from 1905 up until now have had some hands from somebody African American or Latino or somebody of color. And so I just look at that modeling factor and really I'm an educator who educates, but I also get educated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can teach, but I love to be taught. And so it's a process. It's always an evolutionary process, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so that transaction happens at, if I may, almost like at the nuclear level, at the cellular level, to where I'm having these discussions with my children. I'm having these, and it really involves a parent being part of the process.
That's interesting. I think when I, by the way, this is Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday,
Yes. Yes.
and I was thinking about him as you were talking, right? Where the history book shows that Daddy King would have all these civil rights leaders and men in community sit around his table, and Martin was able to glean from
Yes.
that kind of table that was set for him by his parent, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
it produced a transformational leader. So I
Yes.
just want to.
Yes.
So your military experience it's in depth. You are a retired lieutenant colonel, and I know that you have something to share with. Just wondering what your thoughts are considering the conditions that they're now serving in, or just what we're, the whole United States system of leadership, and how would you advise people to take care of themselves? What would be something that you think would be a very important part of self-care?
Well, one of the things I look at is and I go back to what I even teach the kids too. There's several things that help you to balance your life. One is getting proper sleep, eating properly, proper exercise, spiritual health that goes along with it too. Self-care is so important. One of the things I look at is the family structure too. Those who are married and have family and so forth. And I always say if my kids or my family were to write my officer evaluation report, what would that look like versus the things, you can do a great job and all these other things, but it's like I heard somebody say, it's like a ARF was the acronym they gave. You have to have achievement, respect, fun, and freedom in your life. And achievements and so forth. That's great, but it's also something that you can celebrate with your family or someone else and so forth. You have to have that respect in your life, meaning that you respect others and others respect you. Then you have to have fun. There's something, I mean, as long as it's not at the expense of others making fun of people, things like that, but it's healthy fun and the freedom to be you. And I think one of the things that has happened specifically, there's a polarization of leadership that we've seen. And the thing is, within the military, we are to be apolitical. We're not to take any political side, even though we may vote one side or the other, or independent, whatever. The key aspect is those seven, or should I say, as far as the Army, there's those principles, loyalty, duty, respect, um, the aspects of honor and integrity, these things that we those are our touchstones, those warrior ethos perspectives and so forth. And so, and there's an ethical and moral code that we have. We take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And so understanding that and the tenets and so forth that we have within the military, it's so important that we take those to heart and then look at, what does it mean for me to serve? Of course, selfless service is one of the biggest things that we do. And truthfully speaking, having gone to combat and these types of things and served in combat situations, is that, yeah, you're supporting and you're defending the Constitution of the United States, but really when it comes down to your left and your right brother and or sister and in arms, that's that bond that nobody, I mean, that's forged in the crucible of combat, the crucible of going through. So, you know, it's making sure that you have, especially being retired, that you also have that same support structure, that you reach out and ensure that you have who are your climbers in the sense who are those that are in your circle or in your TOCs or your tactical operations center, who are those people that you can talk to and so forth, and will throw the BS flag if you're hold you accountable in all areas, mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, even. I've had unfortunately I've had other people I served with who decided to take their lives, and that's a tragic situation. I think being real about what we deal with and ensuring that we get the help that's necessary, and then that's how you have that balance, being realistic with yourself. Know thyself. I mean, knowing who you are, and then being able to reach out to people who hold you accountable and are willing to come alongside with you and help you carry that water if need be, or and that's one of the biggest things.
So,
you know
so that's interesting, John. When you think about people who have demonstrated selflessness to the degree that they're willing to put their life on the line
Mhm.
for what they believe in, do you think that there may be a bit of a contradiction in the minds of some people who have served in the military to think that self care is even important and it sounds selfish.
In some sense to that, because one of the things we're taught is, at times, suck it up and drive on,
Yeah.
But there's some things you can't. There's some stuff I heard, and I relate this to because I heard this gentleman, I think he was with the Salvation Army, and when the tragedy happened down in Texas that washed the camp away and so forth, and people were saying, well, you guys are down here helping people get closure. He said, no. He said their lives have been irrevocably changed. There's no closure to this. This is a process of them trying to move on with the knowledge that this has happened. And I think one of the things that we have to look at is what does it mean now? You know, once you've gone through this stuff, what does it mean now? You have to come to a sense of balance internally, to where you can say, yeah, I went through this and this was tragic. I watched people die. I did, and so forth, not to go off on tangents, but the reality of it is that you've gone through this situation as a part of your life. Now, how do I look for the good out of this and then be able to move forward knowing? Because your mind always replays what the heart cannot forget, and so it's important for us to deal with that heart issue and to say, okay, did how did I either contribute? How did I, or even if I didn't, which is in many cases that's the case, how do I move on with this where I can be mentally stable, emotionally stable, psychologically stable, spiritually stable, because all those can either, if it's done rightly, can assist in your physical statute, and if it's not, it can degrade down. I mean, literally, you people go into depression over these things. So I think to answer your question, it's important for us to really do an assessment. I was an intelligence officer part of my career, and we had to do intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And so with that, I got to do that also when I assess my life and be honest. You go come up with courses of action. Which should be my course of action on how to deal with this situation. And one of those could be, you know what? I need to get some help. I need to talk to somebody. And I had to. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, when I was retiring, I was unpacking some stuff that I had gone through, some trauma, some tragedy, and so forth. And I can't say I was clinically depressed or was suicidal by any means, but I also said, I can't stay here. I got to talk to somebody.
And so, at what point do people need to be thinking like you're thinking right now in relationship to their self care as a priority versus this tension? And I'm saying this because as a black male, I felt that tension and as a leader, I felt
Right.
this tension of always giving of myself, but didn't necessarily figure in what self care was. And then when I began to think about it, I had to overcome the thought that it was being selfish.
This when I was a lieutenant, and actually before that, I think, but when I was enlisted, then I got commissioned. But we have what is called preventive checks, maintenance, and services. This for vehicles and stuff. And we do those. We have motor stables. We go down, make sure the fluids are checked in the manifolds, making sure the mechanics, they look at the brakes, all this other stuff. You're responsible for a vehicle that may be yours. You have to do preventive checks, maintenance, and services. And it's the same thing that we got to do with ourselves. I got to check in. I mean, that's the thing. How am I doing today? You know, Prayer helps. Yes, I believe that. I really do. But I mean, in the same token, I got to check, how am I doing? Am I okay? Is there some checks? Is there maintenance that I need to do? Okay, maybe I haven't been eating right, sleeping right. I got too much on my mind. Maybe I need to back up from my cell phone sometimes, turn it off so people can't, sometimes I need to check out, hey, look, I'm not going to be answering my cell phone over the next, couple days. I might answer some emails, but I'll get back at you, all right? Unless it's an emergency, these types of things. So I think it's, we have these systems in place. We do put them, and I think to answer your question,
Mhm.
we need to put them in place before we go into the tragedy. We need to start thinking about these things before the situations happen because if I already know about it, it's like, where's my fire extinguisher at, right? All of a sudden, now you're running around the house. Oh, I don't have one.
Mhm.
Now something happens. I think it's important. We always wait until the tragedy happens and so we become more reactive instead of
Mhm.
proactive in some aspects. And that's I look at it when I do my checks through my life. Okay, there's some things I need to be more proactive on.
Mhm.
And I think it's called the Oz principle. For first thing that you do is you identify there's a problem. And then you have to own it. You got to own the problem. Hey, look, either I caused some of this or I'm responsible to help solve it. Then you come
Mhm.
up with solutions. And the last thing is you do it.
Well, from your unique perspective, and I think you've done some of it, but I want to be clear that we hit some of these unique pressure points
Right.
that people serving in the military may be experiencing. That someone like me, like a civilian, would not understand that, right? With the unique pressure points.
I mean, one of the things are, I look at how military service impacts us physically. I mean, I was once said that it's almost like comparing dog years to human years in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. It's like a two for one thing, sometimes three, depending on, what your military occupational skill set is, your MOS, and how dangerous, the things that you do are. I mean, if you're behind a desk and all this other versus if you're infantry jumping out of airplanes, doing all this other stuff, which I've done. But you got to make sure that you're putting in, and this goes back to leadership too, your time. A leader has to schedule in his or her own rest cycle, sleep cycle. They take machines offline to see about their efficiency and so forth. And so I think it's one of the things that sometimes we're like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. No, but there's room for improvement. And so I think it's so important that we develop this as part of the process,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it goes to the accountability to have other leaders hold other military hold us, we hold each other account. If you're in a good unit, if you're in a good, um, there's the chaplains, there's behavior health, there's my God, commanders who care. I mean, when I was in command, I always had open door policy. I always
Mm-hmm.
had those types of things. So,
Yeah.
and I would walk around and check on people.
A unique pressure point
Hmm.
is someone who is responsible for pulling the trigger on a Venezuelan
Mm,
fishing boat, being given orders
right.
to do that without question. That's a unique pressure point, right?
It is.
Or being sent. My son served in the Navy, being sent out of the country, and you don't know where you're going until you get there
Right.
because of the level of secrecy. I think that's a pretty unique pressure point.
It
Would you
is.
say? And does it happen? Right.
Oh yes, it does, definitely. I mean, that's the reality of serving. I mean, it
Yeah.
is. I mean, that's one of the things that you have to come to grips with in yourself before
Mhm.
that situation in a sense happens. And we cannot predict anything.
Well, the power of your yes or no has been taken away from you. I think that that's a unique position, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, the thing is, one of the things, and this goes to whether, something is legal or moral, ethical. I mean, this goes into that, one of the things I look at, especially like when we went to the Gulf War, there was what was called the just war theory that, Thomas Aquinas, so forth, Catholic Church focuses a lot on it, but that was consulted in a sense before when they did the war planning and coming up with the strategic plans to go into Iraq,
Mm-hmm.
or not go into Iraq, but deal with Iraq invading Kuwait and then
Yeah.
pushing them back across the Burma. Um, and so that was consulted. And so I think really that preparation process, and this is where you get the Powell doctrine as well that came out, Colin Powell's, and you had military leaders, strategic leaders who understood more of the landscape. Those that really are in the position have gone through the gates, have gone through the rigor to be there. I mean, I know some of them, and they're dynamic people. They really
Hmm.
are.
Hmm.
But you have those who don't. And to answer your question, then you have to look at the ethical and moral responsibility that you have as a leader. I would rather, this is me personally, I
Sure,
would
sure.
rather be able to honestly hold my hands up before God because I made the right decision
Hmm.
versus having all of a sudden a moment where you're mowing down people who somebody told you to shoot them. Now, we do prepare, and I've been in situations and so forth where we had to actively engage.
Hmm.
Um, in that sense, but you also have ROE, which are rules of engagement.
Hmm.
What are the rules? And if we're going to call ourselves an ethical and moral country, then we have to again set the standard, model the standard. Then you can enforce. You can't enforce what you're not willing to set or model.
Hmm.
And this goes to a point that Eisenhower said years ago. He said a nation or a people that honors its privileges more than its principles soon loses both.
Thank you for that. Um, so I do see our military in a very unique position.
Yes.
Um, and from the civilian perspective,
Mhm.
it is that perspective that they have to do what they are told to do, whether they agree with it or not. It's not a question, and that puts them in a unique, very unique class of people to to bear the need for this self care
Mhm.
in a very in a very specific way. And I'd like to have you come back and talk a little more about that as we unpack some of that
Mhm.
later on in another episode. But I'd love to unpack that unique pressure points, places. What would be your perspective on sharing to a group of people that may be serving right now in the military? What would be your thinking in terms of how to, how to see scriptures like servants obey your master, or, how do you, work in environments where you really feel a conflict between your moral standards and the standards by which you are called to serve? Think about it from a pastoral perspective and just share your thoughts.
Well, it is definitely my faith that has kept me the 34 years I served. I mean, definitely. And one of the things I look at specifically because of the fact that serving in the military, I believe God blessed me to serve in the military and not just to serve Him, but then to serve those that the Lord allowed me to uh, basically serve with and so I look at, yes, we're in perilous times. We've never seen things like this before. I mean, yeah, there's been some volumes of things that have happened throughout the history of, people being in the military, and then also, me being a black man in the military and then being an officer. I mean, I face discrimination, I face some other things and so forth. But also I always look at the purpose and plan of God, you know. Do I allow the situations that I've gone through to make me bitter, or do I allow them, the grace of God, to manifest and to show me that they have made me better as a person? The skill sets that I've learned, the things, the people I've met, the places I've been, and so forth. And to encourage other people, it's easier, and I often say it is far more easier to build strong men and women than to repair broken ones. And the core of leadership is how do I allow, and I look at it from a hermeneutical approach, if I may, from using the military. What does it mean for the word of God to manifest internally and then externally as a result of how the Holy Spirit has guided my behavior? the to help people understand the importance of the morality that is the should be the morality, the ethical and emic responsibility that we have as the tenets of our leadership dimensions, as the tenets of our values as a military is essential. And if those ever erode and fall apart, I honestly believe we will, in a sense, cease as a society. And I even see it from a theological or faith perspective
Mhm.
as a Christian. If we pull that scarlet ribbon out, which is Christ in the sense that typifies him, then we cease to exist. And
Mhm.
so, he said, I am the vine, you're the branches. And if I abide in you and you abide in me, you shall bear much fruit. But
Yes.
without me, you can do nothing. And I think, unfortunately, what is happening is we see, some things changing to where we don't even want even the humanity of Christ to be represented. And
Mhm.
that's very dangerous. That's very
Yes.
dangerous.
Yeah. Well, you've shared a lot, Dr. Howard. You have given a very broad perspective and also very needed perspective on how to think about, what it means to be raising leaders, and from an academic perspective, an educational perspective. You've given us insight on self-care, and particularly, and I'm not sure if I've ever had a conversation that delved so deeply into the military perspective for men and women who are serving, that can help bring them into a more clear understanding for us, for civilians. I have a more clear understanding of some of the challenges that face them. And I really appreciate you being able to share that with me. I'd like to uh, ask that if there's anything that you'd like to share, kind of closing us out.
Well, I mean, it's to encourage people. I say it this way. If we ever want to do any type of change within the organization and so forth, we have to see it. There's a spiritual component to it. There is a economic and an educational component. And so all three of those have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can't take out the spiritual and say we're just going to work it that way. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. You can't take out the education because it's so essential. Education is helps the masses educate, and it's also not a systematic one that like one, you know, should I say one size fits all? It's not. It's not. You have to look at it from a totalitarian type of perspective. When I say totalitarian, meaning the whole total picture of something, not trying to control things.
Mm-hmm.
And to say it this way, you got to put your money where your mouth is. In the sense you got, we're you got to be able to fund these things, and the benefit may not be seen in our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
We're putting seeds in the ground. That's what I say in reference to teaching my students. I
Mm-hmm.
don't pass torches. I light other torches on fire.
Well,
That's
it's
really
a
essential.
perfect way to end this. And I agree
Yeah.
that you light torches on fire. I love that. Thank you so much,
Thank
Reverend
you.
Dr.
Thank you.
John Wesley Howard II.